boys and girls, really whoever's wanting to tune in, this is kind of specifically just a live stream so that I can have a conversation with Wildwave. I'm actually going to tweet him. I'm going to tweet him so that he gets on. Let me go content, live. Literally tweeted just at him. Because this live stream, I'm sorry for all of you who actually are watching this after the fact and are interested. And I'm not going to be going for all that long. If you are interested, it's just to really just have a really quick conversation about, honestly, just kind of fixing the conversation around who should be the New York Jets quarterback for 2025, right? Because I think all of us, regardless of if you're in the bring Aaron back, don't bring Aaron back camp, whichever one that you're in, I think everybody kind of unanimously agrees that regardless of if you bring Aaron back, the 2025 quarterback situation should be looked at as let's just get to 2026, we get our guy in 2026. Because 2026 has the potential to be an absolute stud of a draft class when it comes to quarterbacks, the guys that are going to come out with possibly Carson Beck and Nussmeier and Alar, and just there's so many people that can come out in 2026 that it is better suited for the New York Jets to try and get a quarterback in 2026. 2026 has the potential 2026 has the potential to be kind of like the 2018 draft class. For those of y'all who remember, the 2018 draft class was absolutely stacked at quarterback. We saw the likes of, just in the first round alone, we saw Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, that was a stud of a quarterback class, and it was just phenomenal, right? So 2026 has the potential to be that class, to be at least as good as that class. And so I think everybody can agree, yes, let's hold off on a quarterback until 2026. But no one has given an answer as to what the quarterback should be in 2025. That's a legitimate option. And I don't understand some of the comments, or at least some of the names that are being thrown out there after listening to Aaron Glenn in his press conference. Because those two things just don't match up. Because some people will go out there and say, oh, we can just run insert bad quarterback here for a year and go get our guy in 2026. I'm not sure Aaron Glenn is going to sign up for that. Aaron Glenn didn't come here to just waste a year losing and getting absolutely annihilated by the media and the fan base. That's not how he's going to want to start his Jets tenure, especially being a Jets player, in the past. So he's going to want to come in and he's going to want to win. So let's win some games, regardless of if you're going to win the Super Bowl or anything like that. Let's just get in. And then let's see what happens. Before the playoffs started, I was in the thing of oh, you know what? Making the playoffs doesn't matter all that much, because if you can't win, if you ultimately can't go and win the Super Bowl, what does it matter? And the Commanders are the team that changed my opinion on that 100% through and through from beginning to end, because the Commanders on paper are not a football team that should be in the NFC Championship game. They're just not. They don't have a stud defense. They don't have a stud offense. If we want to be really honest about what the Commanders have in terms of like how they got to an NFC Championship game, one, they kept Jaden Daniels healthy, and that is a big, big credit to Cliff Kingsbury, which takes me to my second point, which is coaching. Cliff Kingsbury is an excellent offensive mind, and Dan Quinn is an excellent defensive mind. And they were able to do something that a lot of coaches can't do, and that is coach a good football team despite the fact that they have a subpar unit. That team is not good. They don't have any superstars on that team not named Terry McLaurin. Scary Terry is a stud. I wanted Scary Terry last offseason, if you guys remember it. I said, if he becomes available, we should trade everything in our power to go get Scary Terry, because he's awesome, right? Oh, wait, they have Bobby Wagner, right? They have Wagner, but he's like 35, but he was still really freaking good. Okay, Scary Terry and Bobby Wagner. That's it. Those are the only two guys on that team that, like, you would say are superstars. And then Jaden Daniels showed us a heck of a lot. I'm not willing to say this guy's a superstar after 1 year. Let's see him run it back in a second year, because, like, CJ Stroud was given the superstar rank and then, like, had a really off year this year. And, you know, obviously they couldn't beat the Zebras because they faced the Chiefs, but, like, still, like, statistically and just the eye test, CJ Stroud wasn't as good this year as he was in his rookie year. And that's fine. I still think CJ Stroud is an excellent quarterback. But, like, let's be real. Coaching got the Commies to an NFC Championship game. That's what happened. Because I don't think any of us, anybody, if you would have asked anybody who watched all the Commies all year, I don't think anybody had them beating the Bucs. I know I didn't. I thought the Bucs are a better team fundamentally at almost every position. I love Scary Terry, but Mike Evans is better. Jaden Daniels is a rookie. Baker Mayfield's been in the playoffs before and has, I believe he has a playoff win. You know what I mean? That defense under Todd Bowles is really good. But coaching won out. Todd Bowles is not as good of a coach as Dan Quinn. And Liam Cohen was awesome, but he just got outdueled by Cliff Kingsbury. And then they went against the Lions. I think everybody and their mother had the Lions going to the Super Bowl this year. Everybody had the Lions going to the Super Bowl this year. But, here we are. They beat the Lions. They didn't just beat them. They dropped 45 on them. That matters. So again, this conversation about the quarterback, specifically for the New York Jets, what's up, Wild Wave, is a very, very nuanced one, because I don't care about the other teams. They don't matter in the equation, because once you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. Anything can happen, because everybody knows that this Super Bowl should have been Chiefs-Lions. Everybody. And here we are. It's Chiefs-Eagles. So, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, what happens if you get to the playoffs? Can we beat the Chiefs? We almost beat the Chiefs. It has been a hot minute for Vane. I've been doing a lot of moving and life stuff and the kiddos and getting everything set up. And I thought my mic broke and then it didn't break. It's been a whole thing. But, like, going back to the Jets really quickly, because I think I have a really, really good point here. Let's have a conversation about the playoffs. Let me pull up the playoff picture this year. NFL playoff bracket. Let's look at the playoff bracket and let's have a conversation about the AFC, specifically the AFC. And let's have a conversation of how the Jets could do if we had good coaching, right? keeping the same roster, adding a couple of pieces. We don't know what 2025's offseason is going to hold for us. But let's talk about the teams that were in the playoffs this year. Right? The Chiefs, obviously, they had a bye. The Ravens, obviously. The Bills, the Broncos, the Steelers, the Texans, and the Chargers. Those are the teams that made the playoffs. Now let's talk about the New York Jets one-on-one up against those teams. I'm just straight up. I know that this was at this point 2 years ago, but didn't Zach Wilson take Patrick Mahomes to the final minutes of a game and almost outduel the Chiefs with bad quarterback play and bad coaching? Because we now know that Zach Wilson's not a good quarterback, and we now know that Robert Saleh was out of his depth as a head coach. It's the regular season. Playoffs is totally different, and we still ended up losing that game. But didn't we take that team to the final minutes of a game, needing Patrick Mahomes to go and beat us, and he did? I'm just saying, an Aaron Glenn coached football team, they might hold that at the end there. I'm never going to bet against Patrick Mahomes. Fun fact, Patrick Mahomes is the only quarterback is the only quarterback in the Super Bowl era to be with, when there is, I think, under 2 minutes in a game, and the team who has the ball is one score behind. He's 4 of 4 in game winning, like game winning or game tying drives. To put it into perspective, I think Wingo has this on his Twitter, if you're interested in it, because I might butcher this. Drew Brees is 3 of 6. Tom Brady is 5 of 11. Patrick Mahomes is 4 of 4. So going back to the point is, we might not beat the Chiefs, but maybe. The Zebras had to get involved for them to beat us 2 years ago. I'm never going to bet against the Chiefs, but like, that's a serious conversation there. Then let's go to the number 2 seed in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills. In the last 2 years, we've beat the Buffalo Bills with Zach Wilson twice. We've beaten the Buffalo Bills. What I was trying to say is, we beat the Buffalo Bills with Zach Wilson. This year, we took Buffalo to a 3-point game. They beat us by 3 points. All I'm saying is, Buffalo is not as scary as I think a lot of people think they are. Josh Allen is that dude, and in the playoffs is a different conversation. Doesn't have any interceptions in the playoffs, but he loves throwing to Gotham green-colored jerseys. He loves doing it. He loves it. So, let's talk about the Ravens. I have no faith that we can beat the Ravens. Coaching matters, and the Baltimore Ravens are a well-coached team, and we can't stop the run. They are a running team. Hopefully that changes with Aaron Glenn, but that is the one team that if we were to go into the playoffs this year, I would not want to face in the playoffs one bit, is the Baltimore Ravens. Just hard pass. Can we avoid them? Just I don't want to do that. Please and thank you. Like I said, 2025 is going to be a whole different year. 2025, 2026. We're going to have to see how that plays out. But let's keep going. Number 3, that was number 3. Number 4, the Texans. We've beat the Texans 2 times in 2 years with C.J. Stroud and DeMeco Ryans with this team. We've beat this team twice. We can beat the Texans. We know how to beat the Texans. Moving on, we can beat the Steelers. We beat the Steelers with Zach Wilson. I don't think the Steelers are all that good of a football team. And I also think that we can beat the Chargers and the Broncos. Again, if we have good coaching, that matters. Okay, Wild Wave, let's get into this. We can create cap space. very, very easily. It's not that complicated. Aaron Rodgers can give money back. We can restructure Davante Adams' contract. Let's not take into let's not even take into consideration that we're going to cut Allen Lazard. We're going to have to figure out and move money with Quinnen Williams' contract. Like, there are things that we can do to manipulate the cap situation so that we have a ton of money. Literally and simply, by just restructuring Davante Adams' contract, we go from having $20 million this year to $46 million. And then the only thing that we take is $7 million less next year. That is, we can get $30 million this year and lose $7 million next year, and that's it. Really, really easy. That let's not take into consideration that Aaron has already said that he would give money back. And that roster bonus can be negotiated. That is a thing that can be negotiated. Bonuses that have been paid out cannot be negotiated. A player cannot give back money that they have already received. That is true. So whenever you hear somebody say, hey, a player can't give money back, that's true. They can't. It's against the cap. But what a player can do is give back money that's due. Wild Wave, what's in it? What's in it for Aaron Rodgers if he does that? He gets to play in the NFL one more year under a good coach. Aaron Rodgers, this is my belief. Aaron doesn't want his last year to be what just happened. That's not how he wants to go out. And let's be honest, if Aaron doesn't, let's say Aaron wants to come back and he doesn't want to play with the New York Jets, what team is going to go after Aaron Rodgers? And what team is going to pay him anywhere near the money that he would get if he came back, even if he gave money back? Let's be honest. Let's say he comes back and he gives $15 million back, right? Because I think that's a fair number. If Aaron goes from saying, you know what, I have $37 million due, I'm going to give 17 back so that I'm at an even 20. What team is going to give him $20 million to be their quarterback for 1 year? Because no one has an answer for that one either. The Pittsburgh Steelers have already come out and said that they don't want him. I don't think the Giants are going to go all in, like Dable and Schoen are going to go all in on 1 year of Aaron Rodgers. Maybe, right? So, because they need to save their jobs or they're fired this summer. But like, I think it's fair to say, I agree, no one is going to want Aaron Rodgers at the money that he's going to want to go to their team. No one's going to take that bet on him. And rightfully so, because a lot of those teams are in different situations than the New York Jets. And I got all that. But like, that's the point. Aaron Rodgers is a good enough quarterback to win you football games, but no one is looking for a 1 year quarterback. But you know who is? You know who needs 1 year of quarterback play? The New York Jets. It's literally a match made in heaven. We need to get to 2026. We don't have a quarterback that can get us there. So if he's willing to give money back, this team is a team that can get you to the playoffs. And once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. Anything can happen once you get to the playoffs. And that's the reality. And Wild Wave, like you said, that was a different team. We need safeties, linebackers, defensive linemen, defensive end, cornerback 2, tight ends, right tackle, wide receiver 3. Cool. We don't. We don't need all of that stuff. Right? Because if what we need is we just need to fill out a roster. Right? We can, and I think we will, bring back Jamie and Sherwood. CJ Mosley, unfortunately, he's not going anywhere. If you bring back Mosley, Sherwood, and Williams, there's your linebacker room. And you can bring back Sherwood $10, $11 million per, but put that money on the back end when the cap's going to explode. We're fine. It won't affect the cap this year. We totally need safeties. I'm not even going to sit here and argue that. We totally need safeties. And we totally need defensive linemen. Now, here's a benefit that we have that we didn't have before Wild Wave, and I don't think a lot of people take this into consideration. Aaron Glenn and even Steve Wilkes, they don't aspire to that crazy philosophy of none of our guys are going to play more than 40 or 50% of the reps. Yes, Wild Wave. Yeah, we're eating away the future cap situation, but you understand that the cap goes up, right? That's how you maneuver the cap, Wild Wave. The cap continues to go up. Every year it goes up. And in the last years, it's gone up more than what we've anticipated. So if you keep going on the mentality that, hey, the cap is going to continue to go up because that's what it does. The NFL is a very, very profitable machine. We're adding new not we, because I'm not part of the NFL, but the NFL is adding new areas and new ways of bringing revenue in. The Spain game is a perfect example of that. They are finding new and exciting ways to bring in more money into the NFL, whether we like it, whether we hate it, the Christmas game, the Black Friday game. There are new opportunities for the NFL to continue to make money. Viewership is on a high, and whether we like it or not, the Taylor Swift situation with the Kansas City Taylor Swifts is a positive for the NFL in terms of money, because now we have a whole new demographic that wasn't watching football before. That is, the cap continues to go up, and I am not advocating for us to be the Kansas City Chiefs, for us to be the New Orleans Saints, because none of the moves that I am saying are going to the depths and to the levels of the New Orleans Saints. You know, $10 million is a massive amount of money, Wild Wave. Do you not get that? $10 million is one starter. That means that you can keep your entire roster from the previous year and then add a starter. $10 million is a wide receiver too. $10 million is a linebacker. $10 million is a interior defensive lineman. That's 2 or 3 safeties. $10 million is a tight end. $10 million is a right tackle. $10 million is a massive amount in the cap world. Why are we acting like just because the cap is at $270 million or whatever it is, that $10 million isn't a large amount of money in the salary cap era? What are we talking about? $10 million. If the cap goes up $10 million this year, we keep Jamie and Sherwood for free. For free. It doesn't cost us anything. Because that's just new money, and we get to keep a player that we didn't have to pay before. Yeah, and their 5th-year options isn't until 2026. And JJ's not going to play on his... Like, here's the reality. Wild Wave, we're not keeping everybody. That's the truth. We're not keeping everybody. I know it's something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but we're not going to keep everybody. And when are their 2025 contracts due? Their 5th-year contracts due? Is that in... That's in 2026, right? Wild Wave, I understand that. Sauce and Garrett are going to stay, but Brees is going to be gone. JJ is going to be gone. That was always the plan. I love Jermaine Johnson. I have been and will be the biggest Jermaine Johnson stan. But JJ was always a one-contract player with the New York Jets. That was always going to be his trajectory. And it was always going to be his trajectory, not because of talent ceiling or anything like that, but because of age. That's the thing. John Simpson's under contract. Quincy's under contract. AVT is going to need an extension, but he's going to get a guard extension, so it's not going to be all that much money. And here's the biggest thing. If we extend AVT, right, his salary cap number is not going to go up. It's going to go down. Because again, you're going to put a lower number in the beginning and it's going to expand over time as the salary cap goes up. So I'm not worried about that. The John Simpson contract we don't need to have a conversation about the John Simpson contract until 2026, 2027. Same with Quincy. We don't have to have a conversation about the Quincy contract until next year. Next year we can have a conversation about Quincy. And then again, what happens if you draft a linebacker? What happens if you go and you get a guy? Roster turnover is normal. This is the thing. I think too many people are like, we need to hold on to our players. We need to hold on to our players. We need to hold on to our players. Oh my gosh, what about these good players? We need to hold on to our players. Tyreek Hill, when he left the Kansas City Chiefs, was the best wide receiver in football, arguably. They went and won 2 Super Bowls without him. Good teams need to be able to replace their good players. A perfect example of that this year, the Kansas City Chiefs are more than likely going to lose Justin Reed, their safety, who has been a stud for them. And they don't care. They're just going to, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy your 3 Super Bowl rings, and I hope you get paid wherever you go, but we're not going to give you the Buda Baker money because, well, Buda got paid, and we're going to prioritize keeping Patrick Mahomes upright. Another player that's probably going to walk this offseason for the Kansas City Chiefs, and it's a big deal, Trey Smith, their right guard. Trey Smith has been one of the better guards in the NFL since being drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. He's going to walk this summer, and the Chiefs are going to Chiefs, and they're going to have to replace him. This is the thing. You're going to have roster turnover, regardless of what you do with the salary cap situation. That's a part of the game. You can't keep the band together. That's the point of the salary cap. But that's why the draft exists. You're not going to keep the band together. But you know what is really, really good about this draft class, Wild Wave? I don't know if you've jumped into it yet. It's really deep on the defensive line, not even specifically. It's incredibly deep at the defensive line, and it's incredibly deep at tight end. And Wild Wave, I totally understand where you're coming from. But I think what your concern is, and I understand this fundamentally, is that you're coming from a position of the Jets are going to screw it up because of course they are. They're the New York Jets. So let's do everything in our power to keep the players that we know that work instead of risking it on new guys. And that's just not sustainable. Teams don't win by not getting risky. No one is going to win by just keeping their good players, letting go, and we're just going to hoard on to everything, and we're not going to mess with the salary cap in the future. We're not going to do any of these things because, well, I'm worried about 2027 and what the cap might look like in 2027. So I'm not going to do anything because I want to keep my good players that I have now. Not taking into consideration that there might be good players on this football team that we don't have right now. 7 is a great asset. 7 can take care of any of those concerns that you brought up except for linebacker. None of those concerns that you have can be fixed at 7. All of them can be fixed at 7 except for linebacker. That's the truth, man. That's straight up just the truth. There is a Malachi Starks. There's a safety. He's a stud. He's in play at 7. Do I want that pick to happen? No, but he's there. Abdul Carter, he's a stud. He might go number 1 overall, if we're being honest. Because of what the Titans GM said about not passing on a generational talent. And this is not me saying that Abdul Carter is a generational talent, but Abdul Carter, depending on how you look at Travis Hunter, might be the best player in this draft. I have Travis Hunter as the best player in this draft because I actually think that he can play 2 ways in the NFL. I think you start him at corner and then you have him as wide receiver 4 as your gadget guy, and boom, that's a different topic for a different we'll talk about draft stuff later. There's your there's your defensive end. Mason Graham is totally in play at 7. There's your superstar stud next to Quinnen Williams, and you're good there. I think we have cornerback 2 on the roster, personally. I think you just kind of extend Brandon Echols. I think you just extend Brandon Echols. That's what I would do. I think Echols is more than good enough to be cornerback 2 on this roster, and Glenn and Wilkes aren't going to be idiots and say, oh, no, Sauce, you have to play the left side. And we're not going to ask Sauce to play in zone like a dumbass. That's really, I never understood. I loved Sauce the first 2 years, and what Salah and Ulbrich did to make Sauce fit in our scheme, specifically in a zone-heavy scheme by playing quarter halves, was brilliant, because you essentially play zone coverage, but you basically tell Saucy you're man up on his guy, and that works incredibly well for Sauce. But we're going to transition to 4-3 man coverage heavy blitzing. Not heavy blitzing, I don't like that word, but heavy aggression, right? We're going to send 5 guys. It's blitzing. We're going to blitz. We're going to send amoeba fronts. We're just going to be weird with it. And that's good, because that's going to help Sauce. And I think Echols is good enough to handle most wide receiver 2s in the NFL, personally. And I think Michael Carter is still a stud. So I think you've got a solution there at CB2. I also think you have a solution at wide receiver 3 on the roster. I think Malachi Corley is going to actually get some... I think Malachi Corley can actually get a decent look under Engstrat or Caley, because, well, they're both intelligent offensive play callers. And again, this wide receiver class in this draft is pretty damn good. You can find another stud in the 3rd or the 4th round. I think you really, really can. And let's not act like Tet McMillan isn't in play at 7. I don't think he gets to us. He's my dream, is Tet McMillan. I would love him. But he's at play at 7. Will Smith, or was it Will Johnson? What's the corner's name? Somebody tell me, because I forget. Who's the corner in this draft from Michigan at the top? Is Johnson? Smith? Will Johnson, right? Will Johnson. Yeah, Will Johnson. Dude, Will Johnson? He's a stud. Stud. Like, who's Karen Lacey and why did he mess up? He's the wide receiver from LSU, right? What did he do? What's the problem there? Tight ends, I'm gonna put this out into the world right now. Okay? And it's because there's only like 9 of you here. And thank you guys for being here. And why is Wild Wave the only one chatting? Come on, guys. Hang out. I'm only going to be live for like another 10, 15 minutes. Let's have a conversation. Even though I went live basically just to yell at Wild Wave. And it's not even me yelling at Wild Wave. I will say this. Where was I going with this? Oh, I know where I was going with this. I know everybody's a huge fan of Tyler Warren. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. Dude's a stud. I'm planting my flag right here. Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan. Watch out. Watch out for Loveland. Watch out for Loveland. I would not be surprised in 5 years' time from now we talk about Loveland being the best tight end from this class. All I'm saying, I'm planting my flag now. I love me some Tyler Warren tape. But boys, Loveland. Book it. Book it! Bro. Wild Wave, I would love to be able to... No. Okay, John R. The point I was trying to sneakily make, but now I have to actually... I think Loveland might be tight end 1 in this class. I think that we might be overhyping Warren a little bit and underhyping Loveland a little bit. You know what it reminds me of? Oh, I got to find that class. It's the Sam Laporta class. Laporta went in the second round. I was pounding the table for Laporta. Was that the Kincaid draft? Where a lot of people had Kincaid as tight end 1? And Kincaid's a stud, don't get me wrong. But I think Laporta's been better. I was a big fan of Laporta. Woo! I love me some Laporta. Loved me some Sam Laporta. And I was I wanted Laporta in the worst way. And dude, if we can get Engstrat, the OC that had Laporta operating on probably breaking the tight end records, and then he got hurt at the end, and then it didn't work. Ooh. Yeah, that's a really difficult question, Wild Wave, to answer. That is a really difficult question to answer because I don't have like when you talk to a lot of guys, they have a fundamental like this is how you grade guys and these are the specific things that I'm looking at, and obviously it's different for every position. So like for example, I fundamentally don't understand linebackers and what makes a good linebacker and what makes a bad linebacker. And I'm talking about like middle linebackers, like inside linebackers, not outside linebackers, like inside linebackers, right? I have a really hard time grading linebackers. So like I default generally to what Dom C says about linebackers because I haven't gotten in my journey to like really understand what makes a good linebacker. But I'm getting there because like I understand safeties. It's hard because like I was a quarterback in high school, and a lot of you know the story. I was a quarterback for like multiple years when I was a little kid in like middle school to high school, and I was kind of looking for a way out because I wasn't going to be tall enough to continue playing football at a high level. And then I got folded in half by Matt Milano, took my helmet off, walked to the locker room, and then I never played football again. And so, but I was really into it. Like I went to quarterback camps and I went to those things. And so all of my evaluation comes from the perspective of a former quarterback. Massive air quotes, right? Because the highest I played was as a high schooler. But everything and the way that I approach the game is from the perspective of a quarterback. So it all starts with when you're evaluating the quarterback is like, it's the little things. It's footwork, that front foot, hips and ass, right? What are your hips and your legs doing when you're throwing the ball? What's your throwing motion? What's your release look like? Because those are the things that matter. Because the reality is that you can teach a prospect how to read a defense. That can be taught. It's nice if the kid knows how to do it from college, but the reality is that college players nowadays don't do that stuff ever. Most college schemes are one read and run or just stare down your guy and hope that he gets open because the disparity between talent levels is so massive. And that's why you have really mediocre college prospects going to to the college football playoff championship is because they're not being asked to do anything. A great example of this are the two kids that went to the championship this year, which is Will Howard and I forget the Notre Dame quarterback who I think should convert to tight end. I think Will Howard should also convert to tight end if we're being honest. Neither one of those guys is going to work in the NFL. Will Howard and Riley Leonard. Thank you, John R. Neither of those guys are going to work in the NFL. Neither one of them. But they were really good this year. Quinn Ewers, not going to work in the NFL. But he was really good last year, and he was decent this year. You know what I mean? Jalen Milroe, Dylan Gabriel, they were all really good this year, but they're not going to work in the NFL. And it's just because fundamentally they're broken. And that's the hardest part. Wildlife, this is why I'm so anti-Justin Fields. I'm anti-Justin Fields because his process is broken. Before you get to the part where he can't read a defense, he can't handle pressure, he doesn't know how to operate an NFL offense. Before you get to any of that, which is all true about Justin Fields, he is mechanically broken. That's the better word, not fundamentally. He's mechanically broken. That's what matters. You can't fix mechanics. Because if you have a bad throwing motion, that's almost impossible to fix. Because he's been throwing like that since middle school. You're trying to rewrite 9 years of teaching, 10 years, 12 years of throwing the ball this way. Wild Wave, this is the one. If you want to learn to evaluate quarterbacks in a really, really good way, go figure out why Carson Wentz doesn't work in the NFL. That's the one. There it is. Go figure out Carson Wentz. Go watch Carson Wentz when he was with the Eagles and figure out why it worked and why it all of a sudden stopped working, because all of the signs are there when it was working of that it wasn't going to keep working, and it didn't, and he got Doug fired. And then Doug got Doug fired in Jacksonville. But that's it. That's the perfect case study. Is watch Carson Wentz in the NFL and tell me why it didn't work. And then go watch Patrick Mahomes at Texas A&M and tell me why it did work. Those are two really, really good examples. If you want, I can give you the answer. But that's how you started. And so once you understand the quarterback, then you can transition into the wide receiver. Because now you go and you say, okay, I understand what makes a quarterback work and what makes a quarterback work and not work. But let's talk about their pass catchers. So you go to wide receivers, because wide receivers are easier than tight ends. Tight ends are really, 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 really hard to evaluate, but wide receivers are really easy to evaluate, because now it just comes in with how's their route running, how crisp is it, right? Which is going to have to come down to you learning the route tree, but more importantly, offensive concepts. There is a wonderful gentleman. I will send you his Twitter. I don't remember what his name is, but he writes these books on the offense that this team ran in this year, and they are phenomenal books, and they're cheap. You can get 4 for $60. They're really, 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 really good books. I definitely recommend, if you're really into football, going and getting those books. However, if you understand offensive concepts, you don't need to know the play calls, you don't need to know any of those things, but if you understand offensive concepts, what a concept is trying to achieve, then you'll know what the routes might look like. And then once you know what the routes might look like, you can then start evaluating good wide receivers, bad wide receivers, and what's going on. Because now you're going to really understand is for example, route running. Route running is really, really important. And it's not just about how quick you are in and out of your breaks, which matters, right? Because Elijah Moore had elite quickness. If you go back and watch Elijah Moore and his Ole Miss Pro Day, because remember that was the draft where we didn't have the combine, his ability to break in and out of cuts and of routes was elite. It's one of the best I've ever seen, if I'm being honest. But his natural feel for route running on where he should be wasn't all that great. And so even though he could cut 90 degrees perfectly, when you're supposed to cut at 12 and a half yards and he cuts at 14 yards, that's a big difference, because it messes up all the spacing. Because now the linebacker who's between him and the tight end, or the safety that's between him and the wide receiver running the big, it's that position is closer. So those are the little things that you're going to look at. So with a wide receiver, it's footwork, right? Their ability to get out of press coverage, which matters. And that'll just come with time. I have no answer for that one. But route running, quickness, hands, where's the head? The head is really, really good. Yes. Yeah, he had offers as a junior, man. There were a couple of guys on that football team that were absolute studs. Because here was the thing when I was in high school. When I went in my freshman year was the year that Clinton Dix left to go to Alabama. Clinton Dix went to my high school, but I was going in as a freshman. He just left. So there was a big talk in the program about going to these big D1 like name brand schools, and Matt Milano was talked about as that next guy, that he wasn't going to go to an SEC school, but because I think he ended up going to Boston College, but like he was talked about as one of the guys that were going to go. Like there were a lot of guys on that team that ended up going and playing D1 ball. I think Milano is the only guy that I remember, and it's because he ended my career, who ended up at like a legitimate program. I didn't know that he was going to make it to the NFL, but I knew that team was going to have NFL players on it. So I don't want to say I knew that Matt Milano was going to be good. I knew he was good for a high school ball. But ironically, I had no interest in college football. I didn't start watching college football till like 6 years ago. So it was really, yeah, it was a whole thing. But yeah, like I said, then you start there and then you go to running backs. I have no idea what makes a good running back, if I'm being honest. A lot of it is just vibe for me right now. I'm trying to, that's what I'm working on right now is running backs, because Ashton Genty intrigues me so much because he's so damn good. And I hate the fact that he was at Boise State. Tight ends are really hard because you need to evaluate pass blocking and pass catching at the same time in one package. But then you're just like, okay, he couldn't hold the edge, but like he's a tight end, he shouldn't, but he should, but he shouldn't. So it's really hard to kind of pinpoint tight ends. But I've worked really hard at getting tight ends right. I feel pretty confident in my evaluation of tight end ability because I put a lot of work into it. And I put a lot of work into it because I also put a lot of work into the offensive line. And the offensive line is awesome. Here's the thing, Wild Wave. He couldn't. Okay. I'm gonna go on a little Brock Bowers tangent here. Because Brock Bowers is a perfect example of why, when you're evaluating a player, you need to take into consideration all of the things that he does really good, right? This is why I'm going to explain why Brock Bowers was generational and Kyle Pitts wasn't, and they incorrectly gave him the tag. Oh, this is the rant I've been wanting to go on, and I said I was going to come live for 30 minutes. I hate all of you for doing this to me. Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers was, coming out of college, an insanely good pass catcher. All of the wide receiver skills that you talk about in a tight end, he had a plethora of those skills. He was a phenomenal pass catcher. And too many people, when they were evaluating Brock Bowers, looked at his route tree and said, oh, Georgia doesn't ask him to run a ton of routes. He must not have a deep route tree because he doesn't run all of the routes. And this is where I go, you're wrong. Just because a player doesn't run the entire route tree in college doesn't mean that they can't. There's a difference between a guy not running the route tree and not being able to run the route tree. A perfect example of this is, what's the wide receiver that went to Carolina? Xavier Leggett. Xavier Leggett is a perfect example of a player who had a limited route tree because he couldn't run a route tree. His route running was just not up to snuff, if we're being honest. So, was it South Carolina? I think it was South Carolina. Whatever college he went to, I believe it was South Carolina, didn't ask him to run an entire route tree. They had him run a 3-route route tree. It was a go, it was a corner, it was a post. That was it. Those are the only routes that he ran. But he was exceptional at those 3 routes. He was a dog in those 3 routes. And he did it incredibly well. And guess what? He comes to the NFL level, and Leggett kind of works. Kind of, not really, but kind of works. But here's a perfect example. You know who also didn't run the entire route tree in college because they couldn't run the route tree in college, but works in the NFL, even though now in the NFL he still can't run the entire route tree? DK Metcalf. What's up, superfan? DK Metcalf doesn't have an entire route tree under his belt. To be fair, I haven't watched Seattle in like 3 years, so maybe he's developed that skill set. But like, for the longest time, DK would just run go, post, and corner routes. That's it. And it worked. I don't think that's true. He's a second-round pick. He was a second-round pick. I don't think how you can say that a second-round pick who's on his second contract in the NFL, how that's a disappointment. He's a stud. I think arguably he's in the conversation to be like I think he's easily the best wide receiver there. He's on his second contract. Sorry. Not on his third. He's on his second contract. But he's played really, really well. Just second round pick. Nah, JSN's not better. Nah, bro. JSN ain't better. JSN might have been better this year. And that's a conversation about Seattle falling apart and not being all that good. JSN's not better than DK. JSN is a better route tree than DK, but he's not better. Come on. Let's be serious here. Let's Let's have a legitimate conversation here. That's New York Jets superfan is absolutely right. JSN is an exceptional route runner. Exceptional. He fundamentally, that was his biggest thing coming out, was that he's an exceptional route runner. That's it. He doesn't have better hands. He's not better after the catch. He's not more athletic. He's not taller, obviously, because DK's a freaking behemoth of a human being, 6'3", 230, right? And JSN is as a measly, and this is me being sarcastic here, a measly 6', 200. But like, DK had, I looked into this. I believe he had like 20 or 30 less targets than Jackson Smith-Njigba. He had 40 less catches than Jackson Smith-Njigba and had, I believe they were tied or like really, really close in yards and touchdowns. I think they were either tied or really, really close. And DK missed time. So like, if you extrapolate DK over 17 games, he would have had more stats. Like again, Jason's not better than DK. There's nothing that you can point at other than route running that says that. But like again, you can be a good route runner and not work in the NFL because you can be a bad route runner and work in the NFL. Both things are true. But going back to Brock Bowers, this is why we're having this conversation. Brock Bowers was given this tag of elite pass catcher, but he's really only going to be used to target the seams because he's a mismatch and he can't block and all of these different things. And it's just like, okay, I got it. Let's have this conversation, right? Yes, he did struggle in the pass protection in college. Totally. But when he was pass protecting in college, he was in there, dude. He was trying and he was fighting dudes and he was just... He was giving it his all. He was legitimately trying hard as a pass blocker. It wasn't good, but he wanted to be a part of the run block. He wanted to be a part of the pass block. And that matters because willingness to contribute in the pass block is huge. willingness to contribute in the run block is huge. And even though statistically Brock Bowers isn't all that good at it, and this year doesn't really change that, he's still not all that good at it, he's trying his ass off every single rep to try and win the blocking rep. And he's getting better. That's what matters. Can you project this kid to get better at this thing when he gets to the NFL and in an NFL weight room? Because he's already a really, really good pass catcher and route runner, because we can know how good he is at route running. Not route running, but we can know how good he is and how the ability to run an entire route tree by how quick he is, and he's quick. You know, he's not explosive, but he's quick. So he has the ability to run a route tree if he's coached up right. And we saw that in freaking Vegas. They ran a pretty extensive route tree with him. So, yeah. The one knock that I will give Bowers, I still don't necessarily understand how he makes this work, but he does. He's really stiff. Kind of runs really stiff. It's kind of funny when you watch Brock Bowers like running. He doesn't look like he's moving all that fast, but he is. And it's hilarious. Now, why is it that Brock Bowers is actually generational, Kyle Pitts not generational? It's because Kyle Pitts, at his time in Florida, no. Generational means we're not going to see another guy like this for 20 years. That's what generational is. See, there's the problem. You don't have to be a do-it-all guy to be generational. Most generational talents aren't do-it-all guys. Generational means the potential that this kid has is something that we haven't seen in 20 years. And we probably won't see for another 20 years. And there's a difference, right? Because, like, there are boomer bust prospects, and they're not generational. Zach Wilson is a perfect example of that. Zach Wilson had all the tools in the world to be a successful quarterback in the NFL. The footwork is sloppy, but you can fix footwork. But the throwing motion was excellent. The arm strength was excellent. Zach Wilson still holds the record for the fastest thrown football, I believe, in the NFL. The size and the athleticism, so like being able to create plays, like he had all the tools, but it wasn't generational because he had a really low floor, really, really high ceiling, and he was like boomer bust. That's what Zach Wilson was. That's why a lot of people fell in love with Zach Wilson. And it didn't work, as we know. But like I think generational guys, the best way to look at it with generational is high floor, high ceiling. That's a generational guy. A guy that's going to work in the NFL kind of regardless of what team they go to and what they do, but also if they do end up in the right spot, has the possibility to be like the best player at his position, which Brock Bowers was arguably the best tight end this year, period, in his rookie year. He broke all the records. Didn't he break all of Ditka's records? So again, there's a difference with that. Mitch, we don't have the worst O-line in history. If we look at our offensive line, they were actually statistically, they were pretty bang on average. Specifically, once we took Tyron Smith out. Once we took Tyron Smith out, we were actually pretty decent. Statistically, we didn't give up a ton of pressures. Our pass protection held up relatively well. Once the offensive line was a combination of Olu, John Simpson, Joe Tippmann, Elijah Vera-Tucker, Morgan Moses, we were solid. We weren't spectacular. We weren't the Eagles or the Lions, but we were solid. So yeah. Again, so that's a great point. Marvin Harrison, generational player, still believe it. If you watch... but he also said the Jets still do at the end of that. We don't have the worst O-line, is what I was saying. Zach Wilson had the worst O-line in history. Totally true. And he didn't have good coaching on the offensive side of the ball. Totally true. I'm not disagreeing with that part. I'm disagreeing with the Jets still do part. That's the part I'm disagreeing with. So, like, here's the thing with Marvin Harrison. He had a good year. Let's not act like he didn't have a good year. He had 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, 14.3 yards per reception. Like, he had an excellent year. But it's the Arizona Cardinals. You know what I mean? Like, it's the Cardinals. The Cardinals still don't know if they have a quarterback. I don't think they have a quarterback. I don't believe in Kyler Murray. But, like it's the Cardinals. They still don't have a defense. Marvin Harrison is the only pass catcher on that team. Well, McBride is a pass catcher. But it's the Cardinals. I think that's the part that matters. And so, yes, I love me some Trey McBride. Trey McBride, dope. I was a big fan of Trey McBride until we signed. Do you guys remember that draft class? Until we signed Conklin, everybody had Trey McBride in the second round of the New York Jets. Everybody. We messed up by signing Conklin because we could have had Trey McBride. We would have messed Trey McBride up, but still, we could have. Could have had him. Could have had him. Admit that I was too low on Olu evaluation-wise. I really liked Olu. Like a lot. But I just wanted a weapon. I had Olu as offensive tackle too in this class. And behind Joe Alt, and I think I was right. But we got to give it time. We still don't know. Neighbors would have fallen to us if the Giants didn't giant. They were supposed to grab a QB. I did not want Neighbors. I feel a little bit vindicated with not wanting Neighbors. I think. Okay, how do I say this? I think that there is a point where talent gets overshadowed by drama. And I think Malik Neighbors is that guy. Malik Neighbors is a stud. Don't get it twisted. I have him on my fantasy team. He helped me win my fantasy this year. Malik Neighbors is incredible. Not going to argue that. But, there's a big but. You get to a certain part of diminishing returns. This is why I'm not high on Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur Sanders has a ton of tools to be a successful NFL quarterback. But I think that getting Shedeur Sanders comes with a lot of baggage. Why am I wearing my headset? I think getting Shedeur Sanders is going to come with a lot of baggage. And that's not something I'm willing to sign up for a lot of the times. This only stays between us. But it's one of the concerns I'm starting to have with Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson is an exceptional talent. But boy, does every time I talk to someone in the Jets building, do I get a piece of info that I'm not all that excited about. It's not big news, you know. It's not like he's out there forcing women to diddle him after massages. Like, that's not what I'm getting at. But it just seems like there's a little diva in Garrett Wilson, and I would rather have a bunch of, you know, Larry Fitzgeralds. If I wasn't live, Wild Wave, I would tell you some things. But I can't tell you some things because I'm live. I think you're right. But there are some things there that, there are some things there. I don't think so, John. I don't think so. Again, this is not me saying that I'm done with Garrett, or that's not it at all. I would extend Garrett. Totally. We'll talk later. I just, there's some concerns. I'll just leave it there. But at a certain point, the point that I'm making is you get to a certain point where it's just like, oh, hey, like, my whole thing was Neighbors really, really, really kind of soured on me with some of the things and the way that he handles like the media and the way that he talks about his teammates and the coaches and the things like that. And it's just like, all right, dude, you're a rookie. Relax. Like, what leg do you have to stand on? You know what I mean? Yeah, you're putting up numbers, but like, you're not winning games. You're not like, just take a step back. Larry Fitzgerald was one of the best wide receivers this game has ever seen. And after 10 years, he didn't talk as much crap as you do. And he was with the Cardinals his entire time. And he had all the reason in the world to talk smack. Megatron could have been the best wide receiver this game had ever seen. And he retired early because of the Detroit Lions. And Megatron didn't talk nearly as much as Neighbors did in 1 year. Like, I'm not trying to compare these guys to like those guys in terms of like talent, because those are goats, right? But I'm just saying, like, you can be nothing stops you from professionally acting like those guys. Just be a professional. Oh no, totally, Wild Wave, and that's why the reason I'm saying all this is why I kind of didn't want Malik Neighbors. I wanted Rome. I wanted Rome Odunze. No, I agree. I went to the GOAT. It's like comparing quarterbacks to Patrick Mahomes. It's not fair to the quarterback, but that's what we're going to do from now on. He's the GOAT. It's not fair, but I'm not here to be fair. F those guys. They make millions of dollars. My glasses are broken. I don't have a second leg on my glasses. Like, why do I care? He's not going to watch this. Screw that guy. He's on the Giants anyway. Went to the wrong New York team. But yeah, I wasn't a big, Malik guy, because I wanted Rome. But yeah. Speaking of UW wide receivers, I was so pissed. I was so pissed they passed on McMillan for Corley. What an unforgivable decision. Mind blown. Was McMillan good this year? This is me asking because I did not follow McMillan this year. Let's look up McMillan. Nope, that's a B. What's his first name? Jalen, right? His first name is Jalen, right? 3rd round, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, yeah. Yeah, he was solid. It's a good year. 500 yards, 8 touchdowns. He was solid. For a 3rd round pick, this is a solid performance. Here's the thing. I think regardless of who we picked, they wouldn't have played because our coaching staff is ridiculous. You know what I mean? And so, like, it doesn't really matter who we would have picked. I don't think they would have played. So, like, let's not act like we also passed on Xavier Worthy. He's going to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, there's a ton of guys that we passed, and it's just like, and you're just like, really? We passed on a bunch of these guys? But, yeah. No, I wouldn't. I would have fired JD. I didn't have a 6th or 7th round grade on Corley. We got him right around where I had a 3rd or 4th round grade on Corley. But that's besides the point. I would not have given JD another shot. If I was in that building, I would have. I think we saw a little bit too late as fans that JD had kind of given up on the Jets towards the end of it, and a lot of that was because Woody started overstepping and all of that. I would not have given JD another head coach. I think the right decision was to fire JD. I think that was the right decision. Xavier Worthy went after Malachi Corley. Didn't he? No, Xavier Worthy went like the first round with Minnesota. With Kansas City. I'm sorry. I got him confused. That's on me. That's on me. I got him confused. That's on me. My bad. Dude, it's 1 a.m. It's 1 a.m. Relax. Okay? Relax. How do the Rams keep doing this, man? I'm looking up the grades for the wide receivers drafted in 2024 this year. Jordan Whittington has really, really good grades on PFF. Didn't play a ton. But like, how did they found him in the 6th round? Yeah. But like, Coleman was okay this year. Wasn't as good as Xavier Worthy, but Coleman was good this year. 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like, that's not bad for a rookie. Worthy had 800 yards and 7 touchdowns, but still. Nobody's going to get forgiven for passing on Ladd. Like, if we're going to just be honest, no one's going to get forgiven for passing on Ladd. He was everything and more that we expected him. You know what I mean? The 2024 class kind of went out. If you look at the class and you say, yeah, it really is. I didn't have a first-round grade on Ladd McConkey. Boy, was I wrong. Let me, what was my wide receiver list last year? Let me try to find it. My wide receiver list last year was Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr., A.D. Mitchell, Troy Franklin, Ladd McConkey. That was my list. Those were the top-ish guys. And the only ones that had first-round games was MHJ, Neighbors, Rome, and Brian Thomas Jr. Everybody else I thought was going to go in the first round, but I didn't have first-round grades on. Like A.D. Mitchell and Troy Franklin and Ladd, I didn't have first-round grades on them. I think I only gave like 23 first-round grades last year. I wanted Brian Thomas Jr. in the worst way, dude. I wanted BTJ at 10. I wanted Brian Thomas in the worst way. 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns this year for Brian Thomas Jr. I wanted BTJ in the worst way. I got yelled at for wanting him at 10. Like, dude, y'all are stupid. I had Brian Thomas Jr. as wide receiver 4 in like November. And Dom, it's out there. On Dom's channel, Project Prospect with Dom C, we did a mock draft in like, I think it was November. Or no, we did wide receiver rankings. And I told him, watch out. Brian Thomas Jr. is legit. He's going to be that dude. He's wide receiver 4 in this class. Book it. And he was, and he went to the freaking Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, Mitch, I think I have. I haven't finished. But right now, let me look it up. I think I have like 12 first round grades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, I have 11 right now. Yeah, I think I have 11. That's a really good guess, Mitch. That's a really good guess. Dude, no, he doesn't. That's the whole thing. His contested catch rate is like pretty freaking good. He's above 50% with his contested catch. Oh, he's above 50%. We're trying. It's hard. Life gets in the way. I think Dom wanted to spread out and make it his. I think when we started doing the stuff, it was Project Prospect with Dom C, and every episode was with me. And I don't think I'm saying anything bad with any of this, but like I was doing every podcast with him and every episode with him, and I was like, hey, if this is going to be Project Prospect with Dom C, and I'm going to be in every episode, like I want to be I think we should just rename it to Project Prospect, and like I want to be brought in, and like I'll do content for Project Prospect. And I don't think that he wanted that, and that is totally, it was his baby, it was his idea. And so he started doing a lot of draft content with a lot of other people. And then I think the other thing that he realized is that like I only do draft content post January. So, and that's all he cares about. Dom was ready to do mock drafts in October, in November, and this season just killed my spirit, obviously. And so I think he's more trying to like, he's doing those episodes, but he's doing them like on his own and with other people. And I am going to be a part of that channel whenever he asks. I love doing that stuff with Dom C. We just did a full first round mock draft. And that was fun. But I think that's more his channel where I'll be a guest versus our thing that we do together. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. But yeah. We'll end it with answering this question from Wild Wave, which is, how do you feel about this new regime? I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic. There are a ton of places where we can still really, really, really mess this up, right? And it's the New York Jets, so like you might expect that they will mess it up. And again, totally a reasonable thing to think. But I'm going to hold off my judgment on this franchise, on these hires, until we figure out the rest of the staff. Because the offensive coordinator hire is going to matter in a big, big way. And the defensive coordinator hire is going to matter in a big, big way. And the special teams coordinator hire is going to matter in a big, big way. And who's going to be our offensive line coach? Because that's going to matter. Who's going to be our, secondary coach? Because that's going to matter. And so we've got Aaron Glenn. And his press conference and the way that he handled it and the way that he said those things really, it gave me a sense of, okay, like we've got an adult in the room. This is what we all thought Saleh was and Aaron Glenn is. You know what I mean? And so I felt really comfortable with that, especially like his first opportunity that he was given, he put the media in their place. First question was about Aaron Rodgers, and he said, look, Don't waste your time. Don't waste my time. I've been in this job for 3 days. This is the answer. We're going to evaluate the whole roster. So if you want to hear that answer 9 times, keep asking me that question. That's the answer. And he just kind of just shut them up and put them in their place. Aaron Glenn has no fear of the media and has no regard for their feelings or what they want or anything like that. And he's going to run a tight-lipped ship. And I think that gave me a ton of confidence in Aaron Glenn, the head coach. I'm getting a ton of confidence from a lot of the people we're having conversations with to possibly be our coordinators. You know, I really like the idea of Steve Wilks as the defensive coordinator because he's a veteran defensive coordinator. And what does that tell me about Aaron Glenn? That tells me that Aaron Glenn really wants to hand the responsibility of the defense to somebody else. He doesn't want to be just the defensive guy. And he doesn't want to be just the offensive guy. He wants to be the head coach of this football team. That's not something that Robert Saleh did. Robert Saleh ran our defense. And we saw that when he got fired and Ulbrich became the head coach and the defense fell apart. You know? And he was a big part of those rooms. And a lot of the things that Saleh said about, I'm going to take more meetings with the offense this year. Well, if you need to take more meetings with the offense this year, that means that you're not taking enough meetings with the offense this year. And so I really, really like, Aaron Glenn is really setting himself up to be the head coach of this football team. Not the defensive play caller, not the defensive mastermind. No. The head coach of this football team. And I like that a lot. Going and getting Steve Wilks is really, really nice because I think we're finally going to get aggressiveness. We're finally going to get... That's funny, by the way. It's not true, and I know it's not true, but that's hilarious. But besides the point, it's kind of true, but not really. It's complicated. We're going to get aggressive. We're going to get creative. We're not just going to run quarter halves the entire game and just let the game come to us. And we're going to get aggressive. We're going to blitz. We're going to get after the quarterback. We're going to do those things that we were promised that we were going to do with Robert Saleh, and we never did. So I'm a really big fan of that side of the ball and defensively and the staff that he's going to be able to come up with. I'm also a big fan of the names that are being talked about on the offensive side of the ball. I love me some Caley. I love me some Engstrad. Get me one of those two guys as the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets. I'm excited that we're going to run a modern offense and that, that's it. And that we're not going to be handcuffed on the offensive side of the ball. I know for a fact that Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich were handcuffing this offense into run, pass, run, and just don't lose the game, and just don't take any risks, and just don't take any deep shots, and stop making adjustments on the line, and stop getting creative, and stop doing all those things. And I know for a fact that was the head coach coming in and stopping the offense from fully operating, and we're not going to see that anymore. We're going to play game. We're going to play football. We're going to play to win the game, and that's what matters. And so I'm really, really excited about the possibility of what the staff can look like. I'm really hoping that the New Orleans Saints fumble the bag, that they hire Kellen Moore as their head coach so that Darren Rizzi can come be the special teams coordinator for the New York Jets because I love that guy. He's a firecracker. Doug's going to take a year off. I think Doug and McCarthy are going to do the right thing. They're going to take a year off. They'll come back next cycle. And I don't care. I would put all the weight on the offense on their shoulders. Because here's the thing. This is why, this is another reason why I want Aaron to come back. Aaron, you don't need a baby Aaron. You're not giving a rookie OC a rookie quarterback. That, I think, was an issue. Mike LaFleur is a brilliant offensive mind. I thought all of the play designs and the play calling and a lot of the things that he was doing when he was the offensive coordinator for the Jets was really, 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 really intriguing. even with Salah handcuffing him and in terms of like play options that he can run, right? But he was still super creative in trying to find ways to get people open and schematically attacking the defense. Zach Wilson just sucked, right? Give me that. Give me a guy who's offensively creative, offensively doing really, really like exciting and modern things. And again, going back to what you're saying, this is not me being anti a veteran offense on the side of the ball. Like Todd Haley is being talked about to be an offensive assistant. You know what I mean? And it's just, like, again, makes sense. Todd Haley, former head coach, former offensive coordinator, kind of understands the whole thing. I don't want Todd Haley as the offensive coordinator. God, no. But still, he kind of knows what it takes to do that job and to do those things. And he's out there. And so, yeah, you got a lot of people there. And I think the biggest positive about this regime is that there are so many people coming out into the support of Aaron Glenn. Westhoff is going to come out of retirement to support Aaron Glenn. That's huge. Like, I don't think people understand how big that is. How big of a vote of confidence in this guy is. Sean Payton last year was talking smack about this organization and is now praising us for the hire of one of his boys. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I think that matters because we found out that Sean Payton was right. And I hate to say it, but he was right. It's just the fact. Sean Payton was right. He's one hell of a coach. Because look how many people think that Bo Nix isn't a good quarterback, and I think the jury's still out. I liked Bo Nix coming out of the draft. Bro, Bo Nix went to the playoffs. You can say whatever you want about Bo Nix and all. Bo Nix went to the freaking playoffs. He led the Broncos to the playoffs. We haven't done that since 2010. All right? There's not much else to say there. And then to end with my thoughts on Moogs, I think that Moogs' incredibly fast rise through the Denver Broncos organization is a positive because it was 3 different regimes that came in and kept Moogs, which means that he must be really, really intelligent in the way that he speaks and the way that he communicates and the way that he does all those things. But I am going to give Moogs the opportunity to disappoint me. Moogs' resume isn't all that like awe-inspiring, and we don't know what he did with the Denver Broncos like specifically. And like what I mean by that is like what picks are his, what guys are his, what free agents are his. Like we don't know those things. Because, well, the general manager gets all the credit, and that makes sense. But this draft class is going to tell me a lot. Moogs is going to give me every opportunity to be disappointed. But the way he goes about bringing back our players, extending our players, signing free agents in the draft is going to tell me a lot about him. Because obviously, I think as Jets fans, we sit and we watch and we know this roster and all of these things. It is a long time ago. I know, Havmo. But like there are certain things, like for example, if he looks at this roster and he goes, you know who needs an extension or you know who we're going to keep around? Solomon Thomas. Really? That guy? You're going to keep that guy around? That's going to be a big, big tell on him. Another one that's going to tell me a lot about him is Michael Clemens on the roster. We can cut Michael Clemens free and clear. Free and clear. We can cut Michael Clemens. Free and clear. if he's on this roster, I'm going to have some worries about Aaron Glenn and Moogs, about AG and Moogs. You know what I mean? There's just some guys that you look at and you go, Another one. I think this is a really, really good one. Jeremy Ruckert. He there's a couple of decisions that he can make that are going to be like Xavier Gibson. There's a couple of guys that you're going to look at and you're going to be like, if these guys are on the roster, I'm going to have some questions. I'm going to have some real questions about those decisions. Or like if he lets some guys go. Braden McGregor, Eric Watts, Leonard Taylor. Those guys are studs. I think with a bigger role, I think those guys can play big minutes. And they're cheap. Let's see what happens there. So, yeah. Alan Lazard. If Alan Lazard is still employed. So that matters. I would bring back Tyler Conklin. You don't have to, but I would. Clemens is so bad. He's an idiot. Does every wrong decision that he can make, he makes. Period. Just not a good football player. It sucks. I love the idea of Michael Clemens. Just not a good football player. Alrighty, boys. It is 1:30. The Clemens leap. What are we talking about? What game was that? I've already someone tell me what the Michael Clemens leap was so I can go look it up. I've blocked out the whole regime. The first game or second game? I'll look it up on my own time. Boys, I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to have 2 kids screaming at me in a couple of hours. I need to get new glasses. I got on so that I could yell at Wild Wave, Havmo, if we're being honest. I wasn't going to come on. I was going to go to sleep an hour and a half ago, and then Wild Wave got me heated, and I had to come yell at Wild Wave. And that being said, I'm going to go to sleep now. Boys, thank you so much for hanging out with me this wonderful, wonderful evening. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button on the way out. It really, really helps the channel. We're back. I got the lights up. I fixed my microphone. I thought my microphone was broken. We got a lot of things to talk about. We got a lot of draft stuff to talk about. We got a lot of free agency stuff to talk about. But that's it. Alrighty, boys, I'm out of here.